How environmental carcinogens are fueling the tragedies of childhood cancers. Rates of childhood cancer are increasing. Although new treatments for childhood cancers are giving hope to families and children for a long life, and death rates from childhood cancer are down, the number of new cancer cases per 1,000 children, which is generally called the incidence rate, is on the rise. The single best way to protect children against cancer is to identify the causes of cancer and then to take action to prevent exposure to those causes. Only 10% to 20% of cancers in children are considered to be genetic. The remaining 80% to 90% are due to environmental factors, which are chemical and physical factors in the environment called environmental carcinogens, which are cancer-causing substances or agents. Some environmental carcinogens, such as radiation, damage genes directly. Others become part of the cell and tinker with the switches that regulate genes, thereby confusing the normal developmental instructions given by natural body hormones. These epigenetic changes not only can damage the cell but also can affect the developing child, resulting in multiple types of health problems. Nonetheless, there are encouraging prospects here, pointing vividly to the fact that we should be able to prevent cancers and other diseases caused by environmental sources by eliminating exposures to the environmental carcinogens once they are identified. Now that the DNA of the human genome has been mapped, researchers have a powerful tool for identifying environmental carcinogens that are the causative agents in cancers. Research that focuses on gene-environment interactions can now be linked with information gained from population-based epidemiological studies. Researchers are working to analyze the mechanisms of the interaction between genes and the environment in order to understand how toxic chemicals in the environment cause childhood cancer, developmental delays, and reproductive dysfunctions, among others. This population-based genetic research will help define the link between childhood cancer and environmental toxins and will help identify additional toxic chemicals that may use the same mechanisms. Most childhood cancer is diagnosed during the child's first 5 years of life, with a peak incidence during the first year. The most common childhood cancer is leukemia, followed by lymphomas and brain cancers. There are known links between toxic chemicals and childhood cancers, but much more research is necessary to determine why childhood cancer is on the rise. Since many childhood cancers appear early in the child's life, research is focusing attention on prenatal exposures to cancer-causing agents as one piece in the puzzle of rising numbers of childhood cancer. There are a number of known carcinogens, which are cancer-causing substances, that can increase the risk of cancer in children and adults. A partial list of the known carcinogens is summarized here under. Aflatoxins are a group of toxic chemicals produced in warm, damp climates by various types of fungi and molds that grow on peanuts, corn, and other nuts. Aflatoxins can cause liver cancer in people who ingest contaminated food products. Cancer risk is greatest in people with liver damage or chronic infection with hepatitis B. Children can be exposed to aflatoxins in peanut butter made from peanuts contaminated with the fungus. Air pollution is the aerosolized toxic chemical soup that we now all breathe. Outdoor air pollution includes breathable fine particulates of soot from vehicle exhaust and industrial smokestacks, as well toxic gases from fuel combustion engines, which include carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxides, and other chemical compounds. The reaction of these fine particulates and toxic gases with ground-level ozone, a respiratory irritant formed when ultraviolet light or electrical discharges react with oxygen, produces urban smog. Outdoor air pollution is a carcinogen. Indoor air pollutants are also potentially toxic. This indoor air pollutants include carbon monoxide, radon, fumes from deodorizers, cleaners, household products, new building materials or furniture, household pest droppings, tobacco smoke, pollen, and mold. A wide array of negative health effects including cancer, respiratory diseases, asthma, cardiovascular diseases, and premature birth have been linked to air pollution. Diesel exhaust is considered to be a proven lung carcinogen. Anabolic steroids, particularly anabolic androgenic steroids used illegally by some athletes to enhance muscle bulk and improve performance, are carcinogenic. They have been shown to be a cause of liver cancer. Children and teens are at special risk because they may see steroids as a way to improve their athletic performance in competing for places on sports teams. In addition to the severe penalties for steroid use that are imposed by the governing bodies of organized sports, the health risks of steroid use are enormous. Steroids should never be used for any purpose having to do with athletics by persons of any age. The purported short-term gains are tiny compared with the damage steroids can cause. Arsenic is a naturally occurring chemical element that can be found in air, water, and soil and that can cause cancers of the bladder, skin, lung, gastrointestinal system, liver, kidney, and blood. It occurs as a contaminant in water supplies, which can result in chronic exposure. It is also released into the environment by agricultural and smelting industries. Arsenic was used as a pesticide in the past and is still found in some manufactured products. Children can be exposed to arsenic when they play near old wooden structures made of pressure-treated wood that was treated with chromated copper arsenate, which was commonly used in earlier years for playground equipment and outdoor decks. This industrial material is an arsenic compound that can be ingested by children playing in the soil around the structures or from contaminated dust. Recent studies have shown that arsenic continues to leach from the treated wood for at least 7 to 10 years after installation. Asbestos is the name given to a group of fibrous minerals that occur naturally in geologic formations around the world, but especially in Canada, Russia, Brazil, Western Australia, and South Africa. All types of asbestos are known carcinogens and must be carefully avoided. Asbestos fibers have been used extensively worldwide in shipbuilding and building construction since the early 20th century. Billions of tons of asbestos have been used in homes, public buildings, and schools globally. Asbestos does not burn and is easily fabricated into insulation, fireproofing, ceiling tiles, roof shingles, boiler coating, floor coatings, and spray-on wall and ceiling beam coverings. As asbestos-containing tiles and insulation agent deteriorate, tiny, powdery fibers of asbestos are released into household air and house dust. When inhaled or ingested, these fibers can enter the body and remain dormant for decades. Up to 50 years later, they can cause lung cancer, gastrointestinal cancer, and malignant mesothelioma, a life-threatening cancerous tumor that is specific to asbestos. Children are at risk of asbestos exposure from deteriorating ceiling coverings in older schools treated with asbestos and in multiple other buildings treated with asbestos products. Removal of asbestos should be done only by specially trained workers, ideally during school holidays, since the dispersion of asbestos fibers during renovations or the demolishing of a building puts people exposed to the fibers at risk of cancer. Aspartame is an artificial sweetener that has been widely used since the 1980s and is found today in thousands of products worldwide, notably in diet beverages. Previously it was considered safe, but large, long-term animal studies are now indicating that aspartame may be a potential cause of leukemia. Exposures to aspartame during pregnancy appear to especially hazardous and are associated in animal studies with increased rates of cancer in offspring. Benzene is a thin, colorless, sweet-smelling solvent used in industry and manufacturing. Commercial products containing benzene include paint strippers, cleaners, adhesives, and glues. Exposure to benzene can cause leukemia, lymphoma, and other blood disorders. Benzene was once a widely used solvent valued as a household spot remover and solvent for grease related to automotive or handyman projects in the home. However, the major risk to children today from benzene is through exposure to petrol, which contains benzene. Children and teens can be exposed to benzene while pumping petrol at a self-service station or when fueling small engines, such as lawnmowers. Benzene can also be absorbed into the body through the skin if fuel is splashed onto the skin. Benzopyrene is a black, sooty, burnt substance that is formed when grilling food, burning toast, or roasting coffee and smoking tobacco. Car exhaust, wood fires, and forest fires can also contain benzopyrene. Benzopyrene has been linked to stomach and lung cancer. Cadmium is a metallic element linked with bladder and possibly pancreatic cancer. A component of outdoor air pollution, cadmium is released into the environment from incinerators and zinc refineries. Commercial uses of cadmium include paint pigments, plastics, and batteries. Cadmium is also found in tobacco smoke. DDT is an organochlorine pesticide that has been recently linked to breast cancer when exposure occurs early in life. Women who were exposed to DDT as young girls have a higher incidence of breast cancer in later life than other women. An elevated risk of breast cancer is also seen in women whose mothers who were exposed to DDT while they were pregnant with them. These findings demonstrate how toxic environmental exposures during windows of developmental vulnerability in early life influence risk of disease across the lifespan. Diethylstilbestrol, DES, was a medication given in the 1960s and 70s to pregnant women who were in danger of having a miscarriage or spontaneous abortion. It is a known cause of vaginal cancer in young women who were exposed to it prenatally, and it also causes some reproductive changes in males. There are some data indicating that the health effects of DE may be multi-generational. Diesel exhaust contains dirtier and more toxic fumes than petrol exhaust. Diesel exhaust is comprised of soot, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, several oxides of nitrogen and sulfur, formaldehyde, and benzopyrene. One of the most toxic components of diesel exhaust is 1,3-butadiene, a powerful carcinogen. Diesel exhaust has been classified as a known human carcinogen. Dioxins are highly toxic, cancer-causing chemicals that are produced during the incineration of PVC plastics and other chlorine-containing compounds, such as polychlorinated biphenyls (PCBs). Dioxins are persistent organic pollutants, POPs, and have been found in milk, food, and even infant formula and breast milk. High-fat foods, such as meat, milk, and eggs, contain trace amounts of dioxins that are transferred to people who eat these foods. Formaldehyde is a chemical widely used in household products, such as chipboard, pressed wood, plywood, glues, adhesives, paper products, insulation, and industrial resins. Perhaps it is best known as the chemical responsible for the new furniture or new car smell that is detected as newly purchased items release formaldehyde into the environment. Formaldehyde has been linked to leukemia and other cancers. Lindane, also known as HCB, hexachlorobenzene, is an insecticide banned for agricultural use by many countries because it is a persistent organic pollutant. However, lindane is still available by medical prescription as a treatment for lice. It is a cause of liver cancer. Safer treatments for head lice now exist. Nitrosamine is a toxic chemical produced in the body during the digestion of nitrate-containing preserved meats, such as hot dogs, luncheon meats, and sausages. This carcinogen is also found in tobacco smoke. Nitrosamines are classified as probable carcinogens linked to digestive system cancers. PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, are highly chlorinated compounds formerly used in electrical insulation. They are highly persistent in the environment. They have been classified as carcinogens. Perchloroethylene, also called perchlorotetrachloroethylene, is a solvent used in dry cleaning and metal degreasing. It is a probable carcinogen that may be linked to leukemia, bladder cancer, and lymphomas. Pesticide exposure is linked to various types of cancer, especially among farm workers, their families, and people who live in agricultural areas. Several pesticides, including glyphosate, Roundup, malathion, and diazinon have been classified as human carcinogens with links to lymphomas and other cancers. Other pesticides such as tetrachlorvine-phos and parathion are classified as possible carcinogens on the basis of data from animal studies. Radiation has many forms, and each kind of radiation contains a specific amount and type of energy. The forms of radiation differ from one another in the ways they deliver energy to the human body and in the damage they produce. Radiation causes injury to the body by transferring energy to the cells through which it passes. Different forms of radiation behave in different ways, are found in different environmental settings, and can cause quite different types of injury. However, energy transfer is always the fundamental mechanism of radiation injury. The transfer of energy that is produced by radiation is similar to other common energy transfers, such as the transfer of energy in a car crash or being hit by a baseball. When the moving object hits the body, it slows down by transferring its energy to the body's tissues and bones, causing cuts and abrasions or a broken bone. In a similar manner, when a particle of radiation passes through the body, it collides with single atoms or molecules deep within the cells. High doses of ionizing radiation, the type of radiation found in X-rays, radiation therapy, or atomic bombs, kill cells as it passes through the body. Deep burns, eye injury, and death from radiation sickness are some of the results. Also, radiation can cause destruction of the bone marrow, which in turn leads to the loss of ability to make new red and white blood cells in the body, and consequently, results in anemia and an impaired ability to fight off infection. Destruction of the cell lining of the gastrointestinal tract is another feature of acute radiation sickness, and this can cause death. Lower dose exposure to ionizing radiation causes subtle damage that may not appear for many years. At lower doses, radiation can alter and distort molecular structures within the cells of the human body. DNA, the fundamental human genetic material, is the most vulnerable target. When radiation strikes the nucleus of a cell, a change in DNA called a mutation occurs. Mutations caused by radiation can transform cells, leading to their becoming malignant and developing into widespread cancer. In 1990, the National Academy of Sciences stated that there are no safe thresholds for exposure to ionizing radiation. Even the smallest doses are capable of causing mutations in DNA. In general, the higher the radiation dose, the more severe the effects on the human body, the greater the likelihood of mutation, and the greater likelihood of eventually developing cancer. Exposure to ionizing radiation has been found to cause leukemia in children. Much of what we know about this link was learned years ago after massive radiation exposures in accidents or in time of war. Specific links between ionizing radiation and disease in children are the following. After the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II, there was an increase in leukemia in children that peaked 7 years after the bombing. Later, incidence rates of certain solid tumors also increased. Studies in England have found that children of women who received abdominal X-rays during pregnancy have a greater chance of dying of leukemia in the first 10 years of their lives than other children. The effect is seen at extremely low levels of radiation exposure. These findings led to a drastic reduction in the use of X-rays during pregnancy. When the Chernobyl nuclear power plant had a meltdown in the Ukraine in the 1980s, it released radiation in the form of radioactive iodine into the environment, contaminating towns and villages, people, farmlands, and animals. Children who were exposed to radiation from the Chernobyl meltdown showed elevated rates of thyroid cancer as teenagers. Over the past decades, there has been a significant body of research on electromagnetic fields, EMFs, a form of non-ionizing radiation, to determine whether EMFs cause cancer. Although research results have been mixed, a recent study once again called attention to the potential risk of radiation from cell phones. It is prudent to limit children's exposure to EMFs and other forms of non-ionizing radiation. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas that is generated when naturally occurring uranium and other radioactive elements decay deep underground. Radon gas can seep up from underground deposits and be found in low levels in air, soil, and water in areas where geologic formations contain uranium. Radon seeps upward through cracks and gaps in the soil and can build up to toxic levels when it infiltrates indoor spaces, such as basements. Although engineering remedies exist to prevent its build-up in enclosed spaces, radon is second only to tobacco smoke as a cause for lung cancer in the Western world. Solvents are chemicals that are widely used in households and in industry to dissolve grease and other fatty substances. Also called volatile organic compounds or VOCs, solvents vaporize readily and can enter the body through inhalation or through the skin. Even brief exposure to high levels of solvents can cause dizziness, nausea, hallucinations, and unconsciousness. Long-term exposure can cause damage to the nervous system, and many solvents, including benzene, toluene, trichloroethylene, and perchloroethylene, can cause cancers. TCDD is an especially dangerous form of dioxin. Widespread exposures to TCDD occurred in a number of populations around the world. Studies have proven that TCDD is powerfully carcinogenic. During the Vietnam War in the 1970s, the herbicide Agent Orange was sprayed over large areas of Vietnam as a defoliant. Agent Orange was contaminated with TCDD, which is a byproduct of pesticide production. Subsequent large studies of the exposed Vietnamese population found extremely elevated rates of lymphoma. In 1976, a chemical company manufacturing pesticides and herbicides in Seveso, Italy, exploded, spewing chemicals, including the dioxin contaminant TCDD, throughout the countryside. 30 years later, a study of women who had been exposed prenatally to TCDD during the disaster showed an increased incidence of many different types of cancer, including lymphomas, leukemia, and other cancers. In the United States, a major episode of TCDD exposure occurred in Times Beach, Missouri, where chemical waste containing TCDD was sprayed on dirt roads during the summer months to hold down dust. The town became so contaminated that it had to be evacuated and destroyed. Tobacco smoking still kills more than 8 million people every year worldwide, according to the World Health Organization. Today's cigarettes are more lethal than previous cigarettes, as their ventilated filters and chemical additives are contributing to an escalation in lung cancer rates. Lung cancer, long the most common cancer in men, now surpasses breast cancer as the leading cancer in women. Smoking also dramatically increases the risk of stroke, heart disease, and chronic lung disease. Parents need to know that about 90% of all cigarette smoking begins in childhood and adolescence. If a person is not already a smoker by his or her 21st birthday, it is highly unlikely he or she will ever become a smoker. It is essential that parents do everything they can to keep their children and teens from starting to smoke. Smokeless tobacco, including snuff, is also a known cause of cancer and is strongly linked with cancer of the mouth and tongue. Furthermore, parents need to prevent children and teens from becoming addicted to e-cigarettes, too. E-cigarettes are far from innocuous. Smoking e-cigarettes, or vaping, is the tobacco industry's latest attempt at addicting a new generation of children and teens to nicotine. Vaping is an efficient drug delivery system for aerosolized nicotine and other additives. It sends the toxic chemicals directly into the bodies of children and teens via their respiratory systems. The tobacco companies use tried and true marketing techniques by showing teen celebrities using the product, claiming that it is the safer way to smoke, and adding a wide variety of candy flavorings to provide fun tastes to hook children and teens on nicotine. Neither nicotine addiction nor tobacco smoking is safe or healthy for infants, children, teens, and adults. One of the most important things that parents can do is to keep their children away from any form of tobacco. Trichloroethylene, TERS, is a widespread industrial solvent that has contaminated thousands of groundwater systems across the world. TERS is also a proven carcinogen. It has been the suspected agent in multiple community-wide studies across the globe, in places where excess numbers of cancers or cancer clusters appeared. Although definitive studies of cancer clusters are complex, concerns about terrace contamination of water systems need to be resolved. Ultraviolet light, a type of radiation, is a known cause of skin cancer. It is found in sunlight and also in the sun lamps used in tanning salons. Blistering sunburn in childhood and adolescence is linked with an increased incidence of skin cancer, especially malignant melanoma, in adult life. Tanning salons, which use artificial ultraviolet light for skin tanning, can cause skin cancer. Vinyl chloride is a chemical used in the production of polyvinyl chloride, PVC. It is a known carcinogen that causes liver cancer, brain cancer, and leukemia. It is an environmental air contaminant near PVC factories, a component of tobacco smoke, and a contaminant of water. If a water supply is contaminated with vinyl chloride, the chemical can be released as a vapor into the household when water is used for cooking or showering. Although the earlier mentioned summaries are not an exhaustive list of the chemicals known to cause cancer, they do provide a starting point for investigating and eliminating the exposure of children to known cancer-causing chemicals. Investigating the actual contribution of each of the possible chemicals and substances that may contribute to childhood cancer is a daunting challenge, but one that society should undertake sooner rather than later. Copyright Academy House, www.academy.house